That's right, guys. It took more than a day and a long chain of fuck-ups that I, by some miracle, managed to save myself out of. But the CD functionality of FM Towns finally seems to be working. It's reading the CDs, it boots off of them, it can play the music tracks without skipping, at least in the preliminary test it seems to be doing so. So I don't know. Now the thing about CDs is, it really is a nightmare to work with faulty CD drives. Sometimes, very rarely you can make them work by messing around with the game, but I don't know what it is about CD technology. It's very sensitive. You can dial it in perfectly and everything might work fine when it's assembled, then you put it back together and put in the CD and nothing. So I don't know. In this state it seems to be working, but who knows when I reassemble it, or tomorrow or next week or next month. So I hope at some point there's going to be some sort of a flash solution. I've seen some CD systems have been getting this, and that is definitely the future, because CD technology is garbage and there's really no reason, unless you just want to play original games, and that is really not an option for me, and I will show you why that is not an option later. What's up, guys? So it's been a week, maybe two, since the last recording, and in the last recording I said, hey, I figured it out, everything works now, and wouldn't you know it, pretty much as soon as I hit stop on that thing, the CD drive started acting up again. And then the power supply started acting up as well. And the next day, it just stopped working altogether. Like, I could not get it to turn on for the life of me, and I have no idea what was the problem. So I gave it to the person who knows more about this than I do, and they had some theories. Well, what they did in the end was that they took the power supply here and they just washed it using isopropyl alcohol, and then it just worked. And apparently what had happened is, at some point, I think that was the one capacitor on this thing that had been changed prior to I got it. Apparently that had burst at some point, just exploded all over the board, and it had left behind this residue of electrolytic fluid. Now I could see it a little bit. It felt like it was a kind of a little bit dirty. I tried to go around and like clean it up, but apparently that stuff had gone under the chips, and because electrolytic fluid is actually conductive, shorted something out. Now the power supply works again, but it's still really flaky, so I have to push the start button a million times before it turns on, but eventually it will turn on. And the CD drive, that had also something wrong with it, but something completely unexpected. This thing was like a leaky ship. Every time I thought I like adjusted the laser and something else just went wrong. It was a absolute nightmare to mess around with this thing, but finally last night I figured out what the problem was, and it's a really funny thing. Now if you look here, this power supply has two switches here, one here and one here. If this is pressed in or this is pressed out, there is a 5-volt connection between these that will get cut out. And that's part of the like the CD opening mechanism. So if I push here, that way the CD drive knows to turn it off. Now all of this thing, this 5-volt wire is it's kind of it goes through this really flimsy looking wire and these two contact points. And apparently these contact points inside these switches had gotten dirty over the time, over the years, and the resistance in them had increased to the point where they were still kind of working, but because the 5 volt goes through these, apparently that 5 volt is actually used for the operation of the CD drive and stuff like that. So I guess that would introduce noise or something like that. So the CD drive, as a result of that, was super flaky. Like sometimes it would work, sometimes it would not. I thought it was the laser, and I spent like several days just trying to adjust that thing. And every time I thought I had it, then it would suddenly stop reading. But when I took the two contact points that the wire goes through and just use a straight wire to hook them up to create a connection, the CD drive suddenly just sprung to life and just worked. So I took those two switches and I cleaned them up using some sort of a spray that's used for cleaning contacts. I didn't want to take them apart because they're not really built to be taken apart. So I just sprayed that in and kind of played with the switches a little and left it overnight. And then I measured the resistance the next day, and it had fallen to much better acceptable values. And now it works, no problem. Unfortunately, the power button is still flaky, so I'm not so sure whether I should just reassemble everything and call it a day, or I don't know, wait around and see whether the power supply is going to crap out again or not. If it continues to be flaky like that, I might have to just get rid of that power supply and replace it with a modern PC's power supply or something like that. It's gonna be a messy patch job if I do that. So I don't really want to, but I really hate the fact that I have to press that power button a million times before it powers on or powers off. And I'm afraid I'm just gonna reassemble everything and put it there, and then I'm ready to play, and the next day it just won't fire up again. So yeah, the joys of buying vintage computer hardware. Anyway, that's the name of the game, guys. So I'm gonna make an update video in the future where I've reached some sort of conclusion. So until then. Okay, so as promised, I'm gonna talk a little bit about why exactly the collecting scene for the FM towns is kind of crazy. Well, as you can see here, I not that long ago, a few weeks back, Yahoo Auctions, which is really the place to gauge the value or the market price currently for the most desirable games for any system, any Japanese system at least, that is not easily available outside of Japan. Yahoo Auctions suddenly got a series of the most desirable games for the FM towns suddenly show up, and they were all auctions. Usually when really rare games show up, they tend to be like buy it now and really priced too high. But every once in a while you get an auction that starts low, and then you can get a fairly accurate gauge for how much money can you expect to pay for this title if you're in the market for it. So as you can see, the most desirable games for the system are, let's see, there is Splatterhouse, there is Tatsuji no, there is Purirura, and just a handful of others. The FM Towns actually doesn't have that large of a library of really great games. There are less desirable games that there are. I think the only kind of famous game that is somewhat affordable is the Galaxy Force 2. You can probably buy that for 5,000 yen, but all the other ones sell for 20,000 yen and above. the two most desirable, Tatsujino and Splatterhouse, definitely demand the highest premium. It seems you're gonna have to pay at least 40,000 yen if you want to hope to own those. Of course, that's just for the collector scum inside you that really desires to have something for the shelf. Because as I said, it's not really necessary with this system. You can just burn an image on any CD-ROM and pop it in, and off you go. You can play the game. So yeah. Now, of course, if I was a wealthy man, or at least if I had an income, average income, which I don't currently, I would of course not hesitate to buy these games because really I live a very frugal lifestyle, and I don't really have that much stuff to spend my money on. And yeah, well, back in the day I could afford games like these, no problem, but yeah, not now. So, and it's not really that big of a loss. I mean, what do I do with games when I buy them? I just put them on shelf. I mostly play games via flashcards, and on the FM Town, for example, I just burn the CD because I don't know, that's just easiest for me. I don't want to, even if I own the game, I play it on a flashcard. So yeah. So that's just only for the collector scum inside me. That wants to, that desires to collect things. But the gamer inside me also just wants to play the game. So it's good that I have that option.